but I made this dude drive us to his apartment with people in the apartment, walk in and count that money out in front of us.
Live from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raylan Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
I'm still smoking, I'm so high, I keep toking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too.
Hey, welcome back to Music is Funny. I'm Raylan Nelson.
And I'm Jonathan Bright from the Raylan Nelson Band.
Hey, we have shows coming up June 26th in South Pittsburgh, Tennessee.
Yep.
July 10th in Plainville, Georgia. July 23rd in Panama City Beach. And July 24th in Santa Rosa Beach. So come see us live.
Live shows. Come on out. We got another great comedian on deck today. He's he's been in it for a while, 20 plus years, I'm sure.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites from the YMH family.
Yeah, he's turns out a big music fan. He had and his dad introduced him to some very cool bands, took him to see some very cool bands, and not to mention the very cool comedians he introduced him to at a young age.
Yeah, and he played bass.
He did play bass. Apparently, he's thinking about learning the drums, and if he does...
Yeah, we always need a drummer, so he can come drum with the Raylan Nelson Band. You can find him opening for Tom Segura of late. And without further ado, Ryan Sickler. Thanks for doing this with us.
Yeah, hell yeah. Thanks for having me. Does this look all right? Is this okay?
It looks fabulous.
You look great.
All right.
Everything's very symmetrical behind you. You're doing great.
I'm trying.
So what kind of music do you remember, the first music you remember loving? What was it?
First music I remember ever loving was definitely rock and roll. Early records I had were... Oh, shit. What just happened? I'm sorry. Hold on. Shit.
That's okay.
I'm messing up your show.
No, you're not.
There we go. I'll pick up so in case you have to edit this shit.
Oh, you can.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's all good.
We did 10 minutes. We did 10 minutes with Ari Shafiro on bad Wi-Fi before he got that figured out. So,
all right, that makes me feel better. Okay, so early music was definitely rock and roll. I had Kiss. I remember AC/DC Back in Black very vividly. Kiss Alive 2 was one of the first albums also. AC/DC, for those about the rock, was in there early on. And then when we got a little older, because I was born in 73, so I'm an 80s kid really, growing up. And when the cassettes hit, then we were into everything from Culture Club to early rap back in the day. We were in on it early. I loved rap and definitely country, but I got into country through like your grandfather and the Outlaws. I still listen to Waylon Jennings all the time. I love Waylon Jennings too, but don't you think this Outlaw bit's gone a bit too far? And then I don't think Hank Done It This Way are just two of my I just absolutely love those songs.
Oh yeah, so let's get back into this because we're of the same vintage basically. So all these bands you just listed off, like I can remember the Kiss Alive 2 album cover. At that age, when you opened it up and saw all the fire and the booklets and all that stuff,
and the blood and
just reeled me in anyway. That was probably my first, I listened to top 40 radio around the house, just whoever had it on. But I think Kiss was the first one that just sucked me in.
Yeah. Like who the fuck are these guys? What are they doing? And I'm a huge Hendrix super freak, but even for someone who was doing what he did with the guitar at that age, which is still timeless, I believe. Seeing these guys come in with fucking bat wings and cat makeup and shit, I was like, what the fuck is this shit?
Exactly.
And then, go ahead.
No, I tell Raylan, it's like the Kiss for me was like my first boy band.
I was just going to say that. Yes. Exactly. Lunchboxes, action figures. Like they were the first. I know people like to say the Beatles were a boy band and they were, but to me, yes, it was Kiss that was just marketed down your fuck. I was Ace Frehley for 2 Halloweens, for God's sake.
Oh yeah, I started
know?
as a drummer. I was Peter Criss. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But then there's sort of a gateway the same way. Then you find out AC/DC, you hear Cheap Trick, you hear these other bands, and you're like, oh, okay. And you sort of,
Yeah, right.
out of it. But another thing is the early hip hop, because I was with you, like my first, like Dougie Fresh and the Get Fresh crew, UTFO, the Fat Boys, all that stuff. And when it came out,
Yeah.
it was everything that came out sounded completely different from its predecessor, because everybody was discovering it at the same time. So every new rap group you heard was like, wow, listen to what they're doing. Wow, look, you know, they finally figured out how to make some money on it. So now it kind of all sounds the same. But man, that early stuff was like early punk rock. Every band sounded different and cool.
Yeah. And you had so many, you had Sex Pistols floating in there. There was, I don't know, I feel like there was more variety, I guess, back then, even in rock and roll, even in, you know what I mean? Everyone sort of had their own thing going. And I guess I like the individuality and uniqueness of that. And then my dad, my father worked at the airport. He was a crew chief for Pan Am. So he worked with all these black dudes that were the coolest dudes ever. And they introduced him to blues. And then he introduced that to us at a very early age. So you sit in front of the Honeysuckle Rose. Well, I'm also a big B.B. King fan. So I got to meet him on his tour bus, and Big Red and Lucille. I'm just a big, huge B.B. King fan too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's, I've always thought that's one of the great benefits of having a shitty warehouse job or something like that, to where you work around all these different kind of people. First, you learn how to bust each other's balls without getting offended.
Right.
And then you get introduced to all that, you know, they're feeding me hip hop music and I'm feeding them old punk rock music and stuff, you know, finding common ground in Public Enemy. I'm like, that's some punk rock shit right there. And, you know,
Yeah. Yes.
started morphing.
Yes.
So there's a definite advantage of having the early shitty day job that you have to suffer through. And, you know, it makes you cultural almost.
And I mean, I worked in a CD warehouse back in the day, and I may or may not have walked out with a handful of CDs here and there. You know what I'm saying? So I would just grab shit to see what it was. And if I didn't like it, I'm like, y'all like the church? And I'll just pass it off to somebody else, you know?
Yeah. To be fair, we had friends that worked at record labels, you know, in interim positions, and they would get their leftovers and pass them around the same way. Yeah.
We actually saw a CD warehouse when we were on the road this last weekend. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, it was bizarre.
It was.
What do you mean? It's still like you can go in and buy?
Yeah, it's a CD and DVD warehouse.
Now, to be fair, it could have just been an ancient sign.
It said open.
Oh, did it?
Yeah. Where were we?
Could have been a front for a massage
we're in
parlor.
Memphis.
Yeah, it was Memphis.
It was Memphis. In Memphis, Tennessee.
We also saw a sign that said, what was the insulin testing?
Oh, okay. So
This is bizarre.
there was a handwritten sign that was stapled up onto the just like a pole,
telephone pole.
like a telephone pole, and it said, "Call whatever number, cash for diabetic strips."
What? Diabetic strips?
Yeah, it's like, can't you just go to Walgreens and get those?
They must be very expensive, but apparently there's a whole underground diabetic strip trade that we might need to investigate.
Man, there's a CVS 2 blocks from here. I'm about to get myself a new revenue stream.
I'm telling you, man.
Just selling honeydew diabetic strips.
Pirated. Biodetic strips. Yeah.
But you know, I wanted to say, I know we've said it before about Kiss, but it's cool because they can literally live on forever, because people could just take their place and put their masks on. This band could go on forever.
You are right about that. And half of them have been replaced.
Right.
Yeah. Again and again.
And I'm sure that's not out of their thought process. I can imagine Gene Simmons going, let's just keep it going. I'll stay home, but let's send these 4 guys out and I'll get my cut.
Yep.
Yeah, for real. Send a young Kiss out and I'll just be sitting around collecting cash.
Yeah. The tribute bands are better than they are half the time anyway. So there you go.
When you get to a certain age, maybe.
So let's get to comedy. How did you even where did you come up? Big family, small family?
I came up in an extended family. My family's Italian American, so my Sickler is the only person that's not. My dad's dad was European mutt, basically, and my dad's mom is 100% Italian, and then all of my mom's people, both sides, are 100% Italian. So I came up, I have two brothers. I have a twin brother, fraternal twin brother, and then a younger brother. So there's the three of us. And then I'm in the dozens of cousins. My grandma, her sisters, we were very close to the ones that lived in Baltimore. So extended family with great aunts. And then when everyone started dying, I started living with those relatives and getting to know all of them a little better. So, I'm big on, I wish I had more of that extended family out here because I grew up around that. My brother's kids are like, my younger brother's kids are very close to my daughter's age. My daughter's 6. So I wish they could, hang together more and just grow up like that. Cause I still talk to, I say third cousin, but whatever. My dad's first cousin's kids and I are still we talk a couple times a week.
Yeah. Cool. So, when you were coming up, were you as a youngster thinking about comedy, or was it rock and roll, sports, all that? And you just figured like maybe like the funny guy, and then later in life, like maybe I can figure out a way to do this.
It's a good question. So I guess I was a typical boy. I was into girls. I remember being interviewed about sports in high school because I was good. And the guy's like, "What are your interests?" And I was like, "Girls." And he wouldn't print it. He would not print it. But it was girls, sports, music, that for me. And I was introduced to comedy. So I'm from Maryland, and I've told this story, but we had this thing back in the day in the 80s called Super TV. Right? It was early cable, and it was a box that's about as big as the fucking boxes are. Remember, for a while they got smaller, and now they're all back to big again and shit.
Yep.
And you would press this button on top after, like, I don't know, 6 p.m. or some shit like that. And you got HBO, and there was an adult channel. But back then the adult channel was literally like fucking, I think it was strip tic-tac-toe. Like, it wasn't fisting.com,
Right.
And I snuck down. My dad was watching this movie, and I laid in the hallway behind his chair. So he's watching the movie, and I'm back here watching what he's watching. And I'm 10, 11 years old, and I see these kids in this movie. So I think, oh, there's kids. I'm a kid. I probably can watch this. I just think I'm not supposed to be watching it because it's after I'm supposed to be in bed, and I'll get in trouble. And I see Richard Pryor come on the screen, and it's fucking busting loose when he's taking these troubled kids back to the orphanage. And I start laughing so hard that I get caught. And he's like, "Get in here." And I go in, I'm like, "Oh my God." And he's like, "Sit down." And I sit down, and he goes, "Watch the rest of this movie with me." And that was it. It was Richard Pryor was introduced, and then he pulled me out of bed, the same deal, in 7th grade. He pulled me out of bed and said, "Come here, I want you to see this." And it was Eddie Murphy doing Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood on SNL.
Oh, wow.
And that was it for me. As soon as he did that, like, I dove into comedy like I did music, and he introduced me to Carlin and Dangerfield and, every SNL and then everything. I just started becoming a comedy nerd after that.
How did it sounds like he was a connoisseur. Was he just a comedy fan?
Yeah, he was a big time comedy fan. And, like, he would tell me all the time, he knew. I remember when he took us to see Stand By Me with my grandma, his mom, right? And the kids are fuck this and fuck that. My grandma keeps going, like, looking at him like we should be here. And she's like, "Kids don't talk like that." And I'm thinking, we talk like that, Grandma. I just can't tell you that. And my dad later goes, "Look, I know you guys talk like that. Don't do it in front of parents. Don't do it in front of teachers." And I was like, all right, my dad fucking gets it. So then he's introducing me to Pryor and Murphy, and I'm listening to, Delirious and all this shit, all the Richard Pryor shit that he's saying. I'm like, what a fucking education I'm getting about life through fucking comedy,
Yeah.
So my dad passed when I was 16, but I was fortunate enough. My really good friend Shannon, his dad took us to see Carlin in Baltimore. So I did get to see Carlin before he passed.
Oh, wow.
And that was fucking amazing, to see George Carlin live.
Yeah. Yeah. He definitely set you up with the greats to be introduced to.
My dad also, I've go back and forth with DMC from Run DMC, and he says when he can come out, he's going to come on the show. And I can't wait because when I was 14, my dad took us and my friends, a couple of our friends, to go see Run DMC and the Beastie Boys on the Together Forever tour.
Dude, I saw
And
that show. I saw that show in Nashville.
So we saw it in DC.
Yeah.
And I still have the ticket stub. And I sent it to DMC. I'm like, listen, bro, you're a bucket list. Like, this goes deep for me. That's the last concert my dad ever went to with us before he died. And I tell my friend, same friend whose dad took us to see Carlin, he went with us. And he's got a daughter. And I tell him, I'm like, dude, just at some point, let's not forget we got to remember to be that cool. You know what I mean? Like, come on. 14 years old. It's not New Kids. You know what I mean? It's not Paul Abdul. It's fucking Run DMC and the Beastie Boys at the height of rap and all. It was just amazing. Yeah, it was amazing.
Back to what we were talking about earlier, that show showed you two completely different bands that were both rapping. Well, the show I saw, the Beastie Boys were out there hammered and they were, shooting beer out. It was a big party.
Yeah, girls in the bird cages and everything.
But then the lights went down and Run DMC's intro music started and there's laser hands scratching and smoke spilling the stage. And it was like fucking Motley Crue coming out. And dude, I'm like, whoa, these guys are heavy.
Yeah, that was awesome. Awesome. And Raylan, I told you when I called you, I saw your grandfather. I thought it was $15, but what was it? Like $13.55. I can't still, even in the 90s, that was absurd. That was like $5. Yeah. And I saw your grandfather, and for the best $13 I've ever spent at Universal Amphitheater. Yeah.
Yeah. I think everyone should see a Papa Willie show. Okay. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you want to look at a silver lining of not having parents from 16 till now, all we did was go see live music. I still have a stack of ticket stubs. We slept out on the sidewalks to go see Clapton. We would go see, I took a cousin to see, it was Color Me Bad and Paula Abdul. I have so many ticket stubs we could go through and look at them. I've seen so many shows, genres of music, live performance. And I feel like if I would have had parents, they would have been like, nah, you're not going to see that show. I knew friends that couldn't go. I'm like, yeah, well, it sucks for you, man. We're going to go see Metallica tonight,
So did you see a lot of shows in bars, like the not middle, but, not necessarily Motley Crue, but some of those punk rock bands, the people that couldn't draw thousands, but could draw, hundreds.
Yeah,
those are some of my favorite shows to see, are those kind of bands in those smallish, dirty, stinky late 80s, early 90s venues.
Like Whiskey A Go-Go or
Yeah. I've been to Whiskey here plenty of times, and the Roxy and the Troubadour. But back in Maryland, they had a place called Hammerjacks where you would get to see some decent acts that were on their way up that hadn't maybe hit yet, like local radio, things like that, or a little bit of just creeping in the top 40.
College radio bands.
Yeah, for sure. And I was a college DJ. I was an AM. They put me on the AM channel, and then I got fired because I just started playing my own music because I hated the shit they told me to play, and then they let me go.
Oh, there you go. What kind of music were you playing?
Man, I was playing Hendrix. I'm sure I played Willie Nelson. I played what I wanted to play. And that was 90s. So it was a lot of Bush, Candlebox, like that vein back then. And I was like, I'm good on that right now. Everything's zen. Let's hear this 11-minute Hendrix jam from the Isle of Wight. Like, that's the kind of shit I was doing. It was AM radio. Who gave a fuck? Nobody was listening but me. I was the only one listening to what I was playing.
Right. So your dad introduces you to comedy. So you're a fan. At what point do you go?
And blues. My dad did both of those.
Yeah, but you didn't want to be a blues singer, did you? Or is it?
Yeah. Did you ever want to be a singer or be in a band?
I never wanted to be a singer because I knew I couldn't sing. Like, I would sing while I was cutting the grass with my headphones on and my riding mower, cutting the grass. I'm out there singing. And when I would come in, my dad would tell me I sounded like a cat in heat. So I knew that I couldn't fucking sing. But I did play. I played musical instruments growing up. The first instrument I started fucking around with was like middle school or elementary school was a clarinet. Then I hated that. Then I went to the trumpet. Wasn't good at that. Always wanted to do the drums. I still want to learn. If my daughter ever wants to drum, I'm going to take lessons with her. And I should. I record here at the fucking Santa Monica Music Center. I could take my lessons on Tommy Lee's drum set that he donated. Yeah.
You should do it. It's the most fun instrument to play. That's the one I started on.
We always need a drummer, Ryan. You could drum with us.
You never really see a fat drummer either. I feel like they burn so much calories.
There's a few of them in town.
There's a few of them, but usually they're in shape out there. But I played bass guitar for a while, and one of the first, this white dude was my teacher. He had long hair. His name was Bo, and I came in. He's like, "All right, what song you want to learn first? You want to do some Van Halen? What do you want to learn?" I'm like, "I want to learn this BB King song right here." And he was like, "Who the fuck are you?" And I just started laughing so hard because I remember being from growing up in and around Baltimore. It was one day. We're probably 11. My little brother's not quite 4 years younger than us, and we're sitting my dad's like, "I'll be right back. I'm running in the store." And we're in this neighborhood that's mostly black people, and these black guys hear us listening to BB King, and they were probably in their 20s, and they come over, they go, "What are y'all listening to?" And we're like, "BB King." And they just look at each other like, these three little white kids in this station wagon are jamming out the BB, and they're like, "How do you even know BB King?" We're like, "Oh my God, we love BB King. Our dad introduced." So they're standing to see if this black guy comes out of the store or something. He adopted us. They're just would not fucking get over the fact that these three little white kids are listening to BB King in a station wagon. It just blew their minds. I've never forgot how that blew their minds.
That's hysterical. So clearly you went into comedy eventually, but at what point did you
just start going to open mics?
How did that come about? How did you get your start?
So the first thing I did, I was 20. I was still living in Baltimore at the time. And a friend of mine said, "Look, man, I think you're the funniest one in our group. And I think you could do stand up. And I'm dating a girl right now whose dad owns this little restaurant where they do comedy upstairs. And you should come by." And I was like, "All right, I'll try it." And I did it. And it went really fucking well. And the second time it went really well. And the third time it did not go really well. And I learned quickly how hard, I remember the electricity went out. So now there's no mic. And even now, today, all these years that I've been doing comedy, if that electricity goes out, it's still going to be hard to project and hold the attention of that audience, even now. So third time in, it was a shit show. And then a bunch of life happened. People died, all kinds of things happened. So I didn't do comedy again. I moved to LA when I was 24, and I started doing improv. I fell into that first. I had never even knew what improv was or any of it. And I started doing that.
Did you move to LA just to do that? Or did you just move to LA and figure it out from there?
No, I moved to LA to do comedy. So in 94, when I was 73, 83, 93. Yeah. I moved here originally to do comedy, but I've no parents, no net. I'm working without a net. So I can't fuck up, so I come here to go to Cal State Northridge to also get a degree. And that's the year that the Northridge quake happened. So I wake up at my friend's house and I'm about to drive across the country, and his mom has CNN on in front of me, and she's shaking me awake, telling me the school's destroyed and the town's destroyed and an earthquake hit. I'm thinking I'm dreaming, and I wake up and I'm like, what the fuck? And it's gone. It's gone. But I still come out here anyway. And I go to school, which is literally 2 of my classes are sitting outside on a sidewalk under a palm tree because the school was destroyed. The mall was destroyed, that the homes were destroyed. And I come here anyway because I want to do fucking comedy.
That took balls.
Yeah.
It was, and some stupidity, but a little bit of both.
Hand in hand sometimes.
Yeah, you're right. So I finished the semester, and then they basically tell me, look, you're an out-of-state student. So our enrollment, we are trying to get everyone we can to get money back in the university. So they weren't giving me what I wanted. But they offered me some financial aid to live here. And I was like, I'm not going to take a student loan just to live in a fucking, destroyed neighborhood. what the fuck? So I went back to Maryland, finished up, came back again when I was 24 for it this time. And this time I get into improv, and then I'm the only white dude in this all black improv class, and they loved me. And then it went away, and I ended up getting into the Groundlings and starting in the Groundlings. And then that's a very competitive class, a very competitive structure, and there's a waiting list. So when you finish one class, you could be on a waiting list for 6 months, 8 months, a year to get into the next level. Huh. And in between that, I felt the momentum of comedy, and I didn't want to stop. So that's when I got back on stage in LA. I was 27 when I got back on stage. And then I haven't stopped since.
So that's just, you start there, or you just start hammering the open mics and just set. It seems to be the prevailing path of the people we've talked to. It's like, once you start, you just get as much stage time anywhere that you can.
Anywhere. I mean, I drove out here in my 1990 Honda Civic with original rims, knowing nobody, and started walking in the clubs and telling my jokes. And you just start, hopefully you click with some people who can tell you, oh, you're funny, this show, you should try this show. And then, you know, just but when I first started, I didn't realize, I just enjoyed it. I loved doing it. It was probably a year or so when I got in, when the clubs, where I started seeing it like, okay, here's the business side of this shit. You know, you got to get up and MC a show, and you got to shout out the fucking birthdays and the websites and the blah, blah, blahs. You know, it's all that you start off doing. And I was pretty fortunate. I only did one real open mic, and then moved up to what they're called bringer shows, where you get time, you bring people. And of course, if you bring the most people, you're going last, because they don't want everybody to fucking leave after you go, which always sucks. And then after that, you start getting the invites and the paids and things like that if you stick around long enough. But you guys know, like, most of this fucking business is just staying in it.
Yeah.
Just staying in it and staying ready. That's most of this fucking business. Opportunity comes. If you're not ready, it's see you later. You don't even know what happened because you weren't ready for it.
Yeah. And that weeds a lot of people out there. You have to be obsessed with it, or you're probably not going to last. There's people that get, successful relatively quickly, but most people that do it for a long time just do it for a long time, and things come and go. But as long as you stay in, because nobody can predict what's going to be successful in comedy or music or anything. Things are cyclical. If you just hang in there, you got a chance.
Listen, podcasting didn't even exist when we started stand up. Like when we started doing stand up comedy, it was albums. Let's go on the road. No one was even thinking of the specials like they are now, not 20 fucking years ago, back again, like, these days now, comics are flipping these specials in a year and a half. And to me, I think we've seen a bit of watering down some comedy because it's coming so quickly. George Carlin, back to Carlin, he used to be considered the most prolific writer in our art form. And you were seeing a special out of him every 3 years, maybe 4 years, like really fucking. But you see the difference in someone that actually will go out nightly and take those same fucking words and play. And we say all the time, sometimes there's a massive difference between just an and a the. That could make the whole fucking joke, What's this? Hold on. Sorry. Got it. Somebody was calling me. Can you see me?
Oh, yeah. You're back.
So I really enjoy like hyperbole. I really enjoy. My whole family was funny. Everyone's asshole this, you know what I mean? Like that's a greeting, hey, asshole, why are you doing that? They don't mean you any harm, but they're generally, the asshole's not even anything they think about. It's the, why are you doing that they really want to know about, So, you get out, you pound the pavement. Hopefully you meet some good people. And then fortunately for me, guys like Tom Segura and Christina Pajitsky, and they've blown up, and then they reach down and they pull up, and they're helping so many people. So I love being a part of the community. And but again, like, it's weird. We all don't hang out with each other. Comedy is like tennis. It's a solo sport. It's not like a band where you've got a few people to hang with all the time. We see each other at shows if we're on shows. So there's the hugs and the how you doings and everything. We'll see each other at festivals. You know what I mean? Like that's always a fun weekend because I don't get to hang out with comics on a weekend. We're all doing our own thing. And then when we get together, it's really nice. So, but it's a solo sport and you just got to go up there and do your own thing and like being by yourself.
Yeah, it's a big difference than us. And also you guys don't have to pack up all this equipment for your show. That's one thing I'm jealous of, but I'm not jealous.
Also, I don't have to listen to four other people's opinions either.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's the control that.
Do we listen to everybody?
I can imagine.
Yeah, we hear them. We don't necessarily listen to them.
I mean, we listen to each other's opinions.
But so,
it is. It's a nice for people who are control freaks, and I would say most comedians are. That it's nice not to have to. What do you think? Well, why don't we say the joke this way? Like, I don't want to say it that way, but we're going to do that so that our partnership doesn't fucking have issues. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to worry about that. Yeah.
So did you do a bunch of road work at some point, or you're not? Because I've always thought about Los Angeles would be a tough place to actually get out because it's so far away from everything. Like where we are, you can get to Chicago, you can get to Pittsburgh, you can get down to Florida. Everything's 8 to 10 hours away until you get to Texas and beyond. So I would even think New York comics have an advantage of being able to hit the road easier than if you're out and I guess you tour California, you know?
Yeah, you think about it, like the West Coast is really 3 states and 80% of it is all California, right? The East Coast, you go Maine down to Florida, you got, I don't know how many fucking states. So you got all this opportunity to do all these other gigs. So you're right. New York can hit, they can go up to Boston, they can go down to Philly, Baltimore, DC, down into Virginia and the Carolinas, all the way down into, Atlanta, down to Florida, even down to Texas. And a lot of the reason, sorry, keep hitting this damn thing. In addition to the income tax that Texas doesn't have, a lot of comics are going now because of what you said. You've eliminated that 6-hour flight. Now everything's a 3-hour flight, no matter where the fuck you're going, because you're centrally located. So, like Chappelle lives in Ohio. I mean, everything out of Ohio is not going to be, I hate that fucking flight. And then sometimes you're doing it and you're only going for 3 days.
Yeah.
You're on a 6-hour flight for 3 days,
Yeah, we've done 10-hour drives for 2 days and stuff like that early on. That'll break you eventually. But it's probably a lot like, corporations, everybody's working from home now with podcasting and the internet. We've dealt with it music wise, the internet disrupting everything and you're not getting paid for any music or anything. But with comics, I think they probably realize, shit, I don't have to live anywhere to be a comic. I can do a podcast.
Not anymore.
Yeah, I can do a podcast. I guess if you want to get on TV, you might, I don't even know if that's the case. If you get popular enough with a podcast or whatever, they might seek you out. But aside from trying to get on TV, I can't imagine why anybody is choosing to live anywhere other than.
Look, I have a daughter here and I'm a single dad, or I would split. I'm telling you, I would split. I'd go check it out for a little while for sure. Why not? I mean, we moved here. I moved here not because of the weather and, it was New York or LA for me. And I was tired of the winters and living. Like, I don't mind playing in the snow, but I don't want to fucking live it anymore. I'm tired. I was tired of climbing through my hatchback of frozen fucking doors and getting out there at 6 a.m. to start my car just so it's warm and hope somebody doesn't steal the fucking thing while it's warming up. You're doing that shit in Baltimore. You're taking a huge risk.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're starting a getaway car. You know what I'm saying? You're warming it up for them and shit. But yeah.
Yeah, I would.
But getting out of here, honestly, it's an hour flight to San Francisco and it's an hour flight to Vegas. It's 2 hours to drive to San Diego. Phoenix is an hour flight. Tahoe's close. So you got those pockets. But you're right. Once you want to get to the Midwest or beyond, it gets to be a pain in the dick.
You've gone a long way before you've gone anywhere when you do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also in 2019, before COVID, we drove out to Texas and did a little Texas run and drove back home. And it's 15 and a half hours out to Austin from Nashville. And so by the end of that, we're like, we are never driving to Texas again. We are only flying there. And then like a month ago,
we haven't played in so long. Somebody's like, hey, we got a few dates. We're like, huh, we could
we'll
drive
out to Texas.
Yeah, right. We'll do that.
It's kind of like,
it's kind of like how shitty that is. Let's do it again.
It's kind of like doing acid when you don't do it anymore. And all of a sudden you have it after many years. You're like, oh, this is why I didn't want to do this. I remember now. I only remember the fun parts of it.
Yeah.
So you've done like, it wasn't just stand up when you were in Los Angeles. You've done some stuff in the industry producing and things like that. How'd that come about?
Yeah. So part of that goes back to college. I knew having a backup plan, what I wanted to do was work in entertainment. So I learned how I did mass comm. I learned TV, radio, which doesn't even exist anymore. It's so funny. TV and radio are the first two things in there. They're basically fucking gone.
Right.
So I learned that. And then when I got out here, you know, I needed a day job because I'm a comedian that wants to perform at night versus a lot of these actors and actresses. They want the night gigs so they can go audition during the day. It's why you're seeing a lot of waiters, waitresses, service industry type shit. But I got a job as a PA and I was a runner and I would just deliver digibetas, or they're like, hey, take this tape over to this person, go pick this shit up. And in between runs, I would just make people laugh and start sitting down with them. And they're like, what do you really do? I'm like, well, I'm here to do comedy, but I like this shit too. So I sat down with my friend Tracy. She was like my mentor and she showed me how to do promos and post-production. I didn't know any of that stuff. And I started learning how to do that. And working in post-production, I learned how to like reverse engineer to be a good producer, because I'd sit there and I'd be like, well, did you guys get B-roll of this shit over here? Nah. Did you guys get room tone? Nah. Did you guys get audio of the? Hey, can you have Raylan tell JB this? I'm like, yeah, we can if you had her say it. Did you have her say that line? Nah. So I started seeing how fucked up these projects were coming in and what we had to do to make the magic out of the shit. And I reverse engineered when I started producing, like, hey, let's make sure that we're giving them this and this and this and this. And now I'm telling you that shit, Jamie Foxx, I heard him say years ago when he did Ray, like his grandma would make him come home from school and take piano lessons. And he fucking didn't want to do it because he was a boy. He wanted to go out, play and shit. And then boom, he gets the role of Ray and he knows how to play. And you know what I mean? And it all makes sense. So now it makes sense to me that I sit here in this studio and my producer Ash and I do everything, and we do our promos, we do our production, we do our post, you know, we do it together. So it's all worked out and it's all been necessary. Even when I hated every fucking second of it, I get it now, you know, I get it.
We got the same process. We've done everything ourselves up to this point, make all our records ourselves, you know, and the more, you know, if you ever get a reach and you own everything, and to your point, nobody's telling you what to do. Nobody.
Yeah, it's nice.
Listen, this is the most successful thing I've ever done because I haven't had to listen to a fucking person tell me anything. I know what the fuck I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. Chris Rock talks about this. Like, you get these executives who have to justify their positions and their jobs, and they bring someone like a Chris Rock in and they go, all right, here's what we're going to do. It's like, no. We're doing what the fuck I want to do. You found me. You brought me in. Let me do what I do. You know, just sit back and take the fucking check and let me make you look good. Stop making notes to make notes. Stop thinking you got to chime in just to justify that 401k you probably don't fucking deserve over there, bro. Like, settle the fuck down. Yeah, but I don't have to listen to anybody. Nobody. And it's doing great. Yeah.
You just described major record labels.
I know. It blows me away when Braylon hit me up. I was like, God, comedy and music. I was telling my friend, like, the parallels of like just shitty hotels, shitty deals, getting robbed, getting lied to, never getting paid, getting stole from. I mean, all of it. It's so much the same. The only thing is you guys go and put it into beautiful music and we laugh about it.
Yeah. What is that? I heard somebody say, I can't remember now. Anyway. But yeah, it's crazy.
Remember how many times we were waiting for numbers to batch?
Oh God, yeah. We made a whole trip to Colorado and got stiffed from bringing back bad memories now. Yeah, the horrible promoters and the guarantees, like, oh, there's going to be this, that, and the other, and you show up, you're like, what? This is what I was thinking about. TV and radio. You talked about it. I was driving in thinking about this. Pretty much dead. And I was like, why?
R.I.P.
But why is it dead? And I was like, probably because of the FCC, right? Because you can't put anything you want on broadcast TV or radio. But my point is, nowadays, who the fuck are we protecting? A kid can get on the internet and see horrid things anytime he wants. So why
you can see beheadings?
Yes. So
you can see sex, all of it immediately.
So why can't a network just go, we'll put on shit that's good. We'll have a disclaimer at the beginning. This is not for kids like they do movies, but just let it fly. You know what I mean? What's keeping them from doing that?
Kids.
Well, they're gonna die a death because nobody. I mean, it's already dying. But podcasts are basically just fantastic morning radio shows when you get right down to it.
Look, they're really this is what I was gonna say before. Like when I started doing stand up, it was stand up, and then it became, well, you got to learn how to do WordPress, and you got to get like a website going, and then you had social media, and it's like, well, you got to get that MySpace going. You're not on Facebook, man. You better get on Instagram. You don't have a YouTube, and it's like, Jesus fucking Christ. And comics have jumped every level, and then podcasting. I mean, these podcasts didn't come from actors. They didn't come from politics. They were comedians that did all this shit, and now everyone's doing them, but it was something that was really pioneered mostly by comics in this genre and then turned into, these aren't podcasts anymore. It's exactly what you said. They're morning shows, they're TV shows, they're interview. You're doing a television show right now. This is podcasting. We used to sit in our fucking apartment or in the car and talk to each other, and have those, or on your bus and have those conversations. And now, it's full on production, everything, it's funny when people complain, because I'm like, you could turn this shit off. It's not free to bring you this free podcast. It's not free to do this, Yeah.
And it's a trip. It's the new art. I don't know if it's just another offshoot of comedy or a completely different art form in itself. Because I mean, some people that are great on podcasts couldn't do stand up for shit. And they probably find that out when they are like, well, I'm funny on the podcast and I've got a bunch of YouTube followers. Let me go hit a club. And then,
I've seen a couple of those shows and it's not great. It's not great.
No, people mistake, stand up is a different beast than podcasting. But the good thing about podcasting, especially for me, is it's changed my comedy. Like I'm a long form storyteller anyway, mostly. Mm-hmm. Then you got, gunslingers like Anthony Jeselnik that's just banging one and Stephen Wright's like bang, bang. That's not my style, but podcasting really opened me up because we would all sit around and tell these stories. Like, are you talking about that on stage? No, you need to. So what that means is you need to start. You need to figure out how to take this 6-minute fucking story you just told here with a bunch of chitter chatter in between and pare it fucking down and make every fucking line in that story matter. And the only way to do that is to go on stage and do it time after time until you beat it into submission and you get it where you want. It's different than just walking up and talking behind a microphone. People mistake that, and it's also fun to sit in the back and go, you thought this was easy? Yeah. Oh, look at that. You're dying up there. No, you have 10 more minutes. I'm not ready. Keep going. It's easy. It's easy. You know how long 10 minutes feels when you're just fucking eating it. Oh, it feels for, you're like, God, how long is this shit?
That's one of the main differences that we have over you guys is if we're bombing, I'll just turn my fucking guitar up or we'll, and just punish them. You guys are just up there by yourself. Like we can take the ship down and just all go down together and fucking start a riot or laugh it off, whatever. But you guys have to just sit there and with nothing.
And eat that shit sandwich. Yeah. And we were going back to similarities. So like I'm a very visual person. Forever when I hear music, I put a video of whatever I'm thinking in my head to that song. And there are things that stand out in music that I love. Like B.B. King's got this line in Sweet 16 where he says, one of these days you're going to give a lot of money to hear somebody call my name. And I was like, fuck yeah. That's such a good one. I love that shit. And I love in Are you sure Hank done it this way? When Waylon Jennings says 10 years on the road, doing one night stands, speeding my young life away. He's talking about the guys looking at the 10 years on the road doing, what does he say? Making one night stands, speeding my young life away. They're all speeding. And then he says, with the 5-piece band looking at the backside of me. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. You got people on there with you. Yeah. I just love that. So there was a night where I headlined this gig up in, it was in Fresno, and I took Josh Adam Myers up with me to feature, and, you know, shady promoter or whatever. Oh, well, this and this. Well, we're not going to do it now tonight, this, whatever. And I was like, all right, well, whatever. You guaranteed us this money. This is what we're getting paid. So we do one show Thursday, we do 2 Friday, and then we do 1 Saturday. And the second one, he doesn't want to do. He cancels it. And he's like, I'll just send you your money. And I was like, no, you won't. You're going to pay us right now. We're about to get in the car and drive back to LA tonight if we're not doing this late show. Nah, no, you won't. Well, I live over here. That's all right. I made this motherfucker. Josh is like, you're fucking crazy. I was like, you better be ready. There might be somebody there with a gun. I don't know. But I made this dude drive us to his apartment with people in the apartment, walk in and count that money out in front of us. And I was like, we good? Everybody good? And then we got out. He's like, you're fucking nuts. I was like, you think we would have ever saw that money? We'd have never seen that fucking money. Yeah, I'm gonna scare you. Take me to your house and pay me that fucking money. And he did. He paid it. He was scared to death, that dude.
So growing up in Baltimore, you talk about hanging around the black culture and having black friends and things like that. How did you work the black clubs at all when you were coming up we've talked to some other comedians talking about working those rooms and how fun.
Not there because I didn't do much stand up in Baltimore. It was only a few times, maybe 4 or 5 shows I did before I stopped doing stand up and picked it up out here. But I've done every room, and I can talk to everybody. My comedy is not for just Asians or Mexicans or white people or so I always love doing I'll tell you, one of the most fun rooms I ever did, there's 2 out here, the black rooms. One was in Long Beach at this rib joint on a Sunday night. Okay. And it was, they were dry on Sunday nights, but you could go right next door to the liquor store and BYOB.
So they were drunker than they were because
man,
way cheaper to get drunk that way.
It was and I was the only white person in the building. It was so much fucking fun, and I crushed. And then one night we did this one I think it was called The Living Room in Compton. And it was this bar that had a literal bar, countertop bar over here, but then over here is the stage area. I know you guys have played these places a million times, and they had an agreement that everybody that didn't give a fuck about the comedy was welcome to sit at the bar. Just, you know, don't go crazy, but sit at the bar. Everybody that liked comedy, we're in here for it. And while, like, let's say Raylan's on stage performing now and you and I are the next 2 comedians, we sit on stage behind her in wingback chairs. It was really weird and uncomfortable.
Wow.
Because also, as the audience is watching, if these 2 people aren't laughing at this person on stage, it's poor presentation. You know what I mean? And we're just sitting there, right? We're sitting there. So it's cutthroat. And I did really well in that one too, but that one was fucking different. That was really different, but still fun. So, and then going back to Baltimore, a lot of times it's predominantly black in the clubs, but I love it. I really do love it. Like I remember seeing this biography on Hendrix where he would ask, like, yeah, it's cool that there were white people in the crowd tonight, but were there any black people in the crowd? Were there any Puerto Ricans? Were there any? And I'm not comfortable in an all white audience. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like that to me does really make me uncomfortable. I like the diversity because truthfully, most of the time when you're talking to people who are diverse, adversity is in their background. And that is so relatable to me. And that's where I feel like you transcend race and class and all those things when you start talking about, you know, adversity that you've gone through in life, because so many people relate to that.
Yeah, man. And if you're funny, generally you're fun. Like I grew up watching Good Times and Sanford and Son and all that.
Dude, did you live in my house, bro?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Even
Good
What's
Times,
Happening.
Sanford and Son, the Jeffersons,
Chico
Different Strokes.
Yeah. But some of those jokes, you didn't quite get what they were saying, but you knew what they would make welfare jokes that you might not catch, but what they were talking. It kind of, a white guy was writing all those shows, but you would get great education. Severinson, especially because I found out later, he was bringing in all his old comic buddies.
Richard Pryor, Paul Mooney, who just passed. Yeah, there's shit. I go back and watch old Sanford and Son. The shit they say on there now, they'll never say on TV these days. There's some of the funniest, and even the dozens that Aunt Esther and Fred would play. You're so ugly, I'll punch you in the mouth. Like you can't even. I watch Smokey and the Bandit usually about once a year, the original one, because I just fucking love that goddamn movie, and I think Jackie Gleason in that is one of the funniest goddamn characters in comedy. Like the dude is uncomfortable with gas or something the whole fucking movie, but he says. That line where he goes, Junior, when we get home, I'm gonna punch your mama in the mouth. That shit is not when they show it on TV. That's cut out. And the scene where he's talking to the black sheriff,
I thought he's like, I'm sheriff.
He says, "Oh, you sounded taller on the radio." Yeah, and he's like, "What's this world?"
He starts it with, "Hey, boy," and I'm like, "Oh my god!" What about the original Bad News Bears?
Oh, dude, for real. Like the shit
one of the greatest movies ever made.
Ever. And it's like, when we have to protect these kids from this. No, look, we do need to protect kids from racism and ignorance and shit, but not when it's directed at them. If it's in a movie, I don't think you need to protect them from it. It's not being directed at that person.
And I think that Bad News Bears goes back to your point where like, well, we got to keep the kids from seeing this. Kids don't talk like this. And in like 1975 or whatever, it's like, that's what
my little league coach would lean right over us with a cigarette in his mouth and hold the bat with us and go, "This is how you swing." And the smoke's burning your eyes and shit. Like, you could never fucking do that now. You could never smoke a cigarette coaching little league kids ever.
Screaming at the little kids. And all that. Another Walter Matthau
drinking beer in the dugout. Yeah. And they don't win. That's the thing. They don't fucking win. It's not about the championship. It's about what we did, and wait till next year, motherfucker.
That's why it's one of the greatest movies ever made, because number one, they don't win. And number two, Walter Matthau goes from a bumbling drunk to at the end, he's fucking frightening. You see him getting mad and like, you're like, Jesus Christ, what a fucking acting job that is, Yeah.
It's a great movie.
Deep on a lot of levels.
So did you guys ever watch like Fresh Prince and The Cosby Show and like Family Matters with Steve Urkel?
All of those, and Family Ties, all those. Fresh Prince was
Hang with Mr. Cooper.
Hang with Mr. Cooper. Yep, Saved by the Bell.
Yeah,
that was my. I know I got a little bit of years on you, so it went back to. But also back then. Yeah, you didn't even have 4 networks. Fox wasn't even around till like the late 80s, early 90s.
And you had to have a TV with the antennas. Yeah. Fox, you're not guaranteed.
You watched whatever the fuck they put on TV. Now, like, honest to God, I tell my daughter, like, she doesn't get it. She's only 6, but I'm like, look, if we just had Netflix, you could live off of it. Yeah. We lived off of 3 fucking channels. You could live off of Netflix alone, but you got Hulu, HBO Max, Disney Plus, and nothing's still the fuck on. You know what I mean? And after this year, though, everybody's watched everything there is.
Yeah. But you want to tell them, you're like, not only did we only have 3 channels, we didn't get to choose what we watched on the big TV. Right. We got lucky. Saturday mornings was our time, but other than that, when the news came on, it's like, oh well, I guess
everybody has
TV
their own individual laptop.
Yeah, and if you missed it, you missed it. And there is no pause it while we're running to the bathroom. You just fucking missed it.
Yeah. Which is, I guess that's the only way I watch Saturday Night Live anymore. If anything good happens, I'm like, well, it'll pop up on YouTube tomorrow. I'm not gonna
I'll watch that. I'll watch that sketch, not that 90 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of music does your daughter like? Is she into music?
Yeah, I introduced her to everything. She listens to what I listen to. We have a deal. Like, she'll go her song, my song, her song, my song, or 2 of hers, 2 of mine. So right now she's come out of the Disney stuff and she really likes Justin Bieber. She really likes Taylor Swift.
Yeah, me too.
And who I love. Taylor Swift is fucking amazing. I wasn't. I was like, God, this girl is fucking amazing. but I play Willie, I play Waylon, I play Hendrix, I play BB King, I play Albert King. I make her listen to Freddie King. I make her listen to all the Kings. We listen to old school hip hop. She likes like Jay-Z. She likes Rihanna. She likes Beyonce. I teach her, like, I am very big on teaching her women in music.
Yeah,
so
good.
she knows Pat Benatar. She knows Stevie Nicks. She knows Joan Jett. She knows, Taylor, like I said, these. So I teach her the ladies in music too. Heart, I've taught her Heart. I'm like, because I think it's in like Trolls, they do Barracuda. I'm like, let me play you the fucking real Barracuda over here with these sisters out of Washington,
We had an experience like that because we ended up covering Ballroom Blitz by The Sweet, that old song.
Yeah.
Well, Raylan's like, I want to cover Ballroom Blitz. And I'm like, really? All right, let's do it. And she plays me the version. It's from fucking Wayne's World.
Yeah.
She'd never even heard the original. I'm like, hold up.
Oh, you had?
I wanted to be Cassandra from Wayne's World since I was 9 years old.
I was like, oh yeah, I used to listen to that. She's like, no, you didn't. When you were a kid, this girl wasn't even born or whatever. I'm like, what? Oh, hold on. What are you? And play me the version. I'm like, hold on, stop for a second.
Yeah, he had to show me the original version. But
we played you're an amazing singer, Raylan. I played your music for my daughter, and Lana listens to you, who owns a music store. And she's like, oh my God, she's a fucking amazing singer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Dude, you don't have to say that just
thank
because.
Thank you so much.
I'm not
I don't think they heard you in the
girl.
back.
I'm kidding.
Amazing.
I want to talk about that. So how did you end up at the Santa Monica Music Center doing your show? And also, Lana, is it Lana or Lana? Lana?
Lana. Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about that nonprofit that she's got because it's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's nice.
How did you get connected with her? And
how did you? So Lana's my old neighbor. When I lived with my daughter's mom, we were engaged. We were living together, and Lana and her family moved in next door. And right away, everyone just clicked. They're just those people, So she owns the Santa Monica Music Center here, and then the Culver City Music Center as well. And her dad was a drummer back in the day, a musician. So he and his brother started it. So it's a family business. He's in his 80s now, and she took it over a couple years ago. So I was originally at YMH with Tom and Christina on their network. And then when all this shit went down, my daughter's, like I said, 6. So I had to homeschool. She doesn't read. I don't have a teenager that's self-sufficient. You know what I mean? Like, hey, sit down, do the shit they told you to do. My daughter doesn't know how to read. So I became a teacher's assistant for a year. And I could not make it to the studio on, Thursday at 11 a.m. I just couldn't do it anymore because that shit was gone now. So Tom really helped me transition out and into my own space. And then Lana there's the music store here, and in the back where I am, her studio space. And she had people back here that were like, I can't afford it. I'm not working anymore or whatever. And they were bailing. So I was like, well, what if I slid in and took 2 of your spots? We'll do a control room office when I'm in now, and then the studio's on the other side of the wall. And she was like, yeah. So I started doing that. And it just, thank God it took off and started doing well. Because the truth is, I'll just say this, I was going to invest in like an Airbnb. I thought, let me just buy something that I can have people help pay the mortgage on. I'll rent it out a couple times a year. The family can all, meet there and do like a vacation together in the summer. And I would have been screwed because remember at the beginning of this shit, you couldn't, Airbnbs, were for like first responders only, things like that. So instead I took money and invested in a studio and did that. And then out of that, Lana's so great. So then the store gets looted. Yesterday was the year anniversary of the riots, and we're open for 1 day. After March, the pandemic hit. So you guys know, literal transfer of spit in your woodwinds, and she couldn't do lessons. And when you want to learn an instrument, you want to touch it and feel it. It's different to Zoom. If I know how to play guitar, you could show me some things on Zoom. But if I'm first holding this thing, a trumpet, any of that, like I want to feel it. I want to talk to you about this. And they couldn't, still can't. I mean, I don't think we're June 15th, I think is when. So that still doesn't exist here right now. And she does these DJ programs and all these give back things for kids, teaching them real skills that they could take into a summer job or even a career that pays them more than, $15 an hour, whatever it is. So I'm back here doing this thing, and then we get looted after being one day open, and we get shut down again. And all the publicity that hits and everyone that sort of pulls together, and Mark Wahlberg hears about it and then steps in and helps and creates this little board too that Lana's the head of. But Lana's had this thing called Outreach to the Arts for a while that helps at-risk youth. So the whole point is to get them before they fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You're trying to help them before they fuck up and say, look, and also these days, like, I don't even think I want my daughter to go to college anymore. I think it's a 6-figure fucking waste of money and time for a piece of paper that you're probably not even going to use. So, and look, it's not for everybody, obviously, but it is for some. Good for you. But also, I think you could have a real life skill. So I'm watching her do all these things with these kids. And I was like, how do you feel about maybe introducing podcasting into your program? Because these things are not going anywhere. Like we talked about, you used to sit in a bus or a car or an apartment, and now we've got lighting. So I said we could teach them everything from being in front of the microphone if they want to host, and not everyone does. And the guys and girls behind the mics are just as important. So we could teach them editing, graphics, audio, cameras, lighting. You get all these different jobs in this one little environment that when you're out there on real sets, like, no, there's just one person for lighting. There's just one person for sound, So started teaching these kids in the Santa Monica Police Department, like we felt it was important. And so today that they have communication. So we created this podcast with these at-risk kids and the Santa Monica Police, where they've come in and interviewed each other, start talking about that. And then it led to now I also teach. So I teach that. And then I also teach Culver City High School kids a podcasting class. So same thing, but for this high school curriculum. And we just interviewed the mayor of Culver City the other day, and it's so fucking funny. These kids don't give a shit. I'm like, well, what are your questions? They're like, what the fuck does a mayor do? I go, listen, that's question number one, because we looked it up. I'll be honest, it doesn't look like a mayor does too much. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't look like the plate's too heavy. We also had the chief of police of Culver City come in, and they have a history of issues. So he came in and talked, and he's 39. This dude, I was like, how fucking old are you, bro? Are you lost? So I'm just doing it as a give back, and I love it. I love teaching these kids. They're learning. They've taken to it. So they'll have a couple of little episodes to show their high school that what's going on. And then the Culver City police want to get involved. So everyone's starting to look at podcasting. And the chief of Santa Monica, the police department, now is this lady that's filled in. Well, she was the original chief. And then when the shit went down with the riots, that lady left, and she stepped back in the interim. And she's just nothing but groundbreaking history. She's like the first female officer, and then all the way up the chain, first, lieutenant, blah, 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 chief, all the way to the chief of police. So I know that lady's and she's black. So she's got stories of sexism, of racism, all of it. And she's pretty fucking fascinating. And then I told these kids, and this is the show, I shouldn't say this, but I really want them to do like a modern day Scooby-Doo. I want the kids and the police to give open cases that have been unsolved from like the 60s or 70s when these people weren't on the force, so we don't hang them out to dry, and try to solve some unsolved fucking cases together. And I really think that with the combination of storytelling and true crime, which is huge in the podcast world,
yep.
I don't think anyone's out there right now working with the police, especially at-risk youth, trying to solve. So the whole goal of getting the communication lines open in season 1, so to speak, is them talking to each other. If we really open the lines of communication and we get these people working together, the streets with the police, especially them being youth, and then they are working together on solving cases, we've set out to do what we wanted to do, which is open those lines of communication, have these people work together. And then if they can go solve even one of those fucking things, like they gave me one about this body that was in a burned down building years ago, and it's still unsolved. And I'm like, why don't you try to start with that? Go find dental records, whatever. I go, hey, are these, like, I feel like sometimes if police just took an extra 15 minutes, you know, they'd be like, oh no, here's how she died right here. You know what I mean? Like, nah, man, I got Lakers tickets tonight, man. I got to get to the playoff.
It is interesting talking about that because up until now, you know, as far as music, you could be with technology, you could kind of be a musician that makes music out of your house or even bedroom and never go out. It's like a whole new niche of I'm recording in my bedroom, and you could get a sort of a following like that. Up until now, you couldn't really do stand up and like sit in your bedroom and do your routine and record it and put it out. But with podcasting, it might create that beast that is funny, not really great at stand up, but didn't have to leave their house. Maybe they're an introvert, but they learn how to
Burnham.
Yeah. You learn how to talk.
Burnham built it like that. Yeah.
And if it's interesting, people will listen. So it's a way for you guys or the comedic element to do bedroom recordings and never have, unless, you know, you're a stand-up, and a lot of you guys are with a successful podcast will let you know. But I wonder if there's going to be a new, like, obviously Joe Rogan was a comedian, a huge pass, but everybody looks at him now, these kids, like, here's the big guy. So is there going to be the next Joe Rogan that doesn't necessarily go through comedy, is just so immersed in podcasts that they become the baddest ass podcaster because instead of watching stand-ups, they're just watching a bunch of great podcasters? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
I think that'll happen for sure because they are two different mediums. So you said it yourself. You can podcast, but doesn't mean you can do stand-up, and vice versa, by the way. Sure. You might be able to be a great stand-up. You might suck at long form storytelling. You know, it's just that, well, how do I want to say this? Like, I guess stand-up is more talking to people, and podcasting more is talking with people.
Yeah.
Unless you're like Bill Burr doing his Monday morning rant, sure. But if you have a guest on, you're having conversation with that person. Stand-up, it shouldn't be interactive unless you're a crowd comedian or whatever. But you know, there's just, you guys know, there's nothing like, good or bad, there's an immediate reaction. I mean, hell, I've got podcasts 3 or 4 ahead already recorded.
Yeah.
Because of our schedules and shit, you know, so it's a minute before I know that this moment's going to be a big deal for other people because I've already recorded it, versus stand up where everything is just in that moment, you know. And
live entertainment's just better than anything else.
I mean, it is performing it, watching it, all of it.
I feel like I'm the old guy always talking like these kids that, like, when we were young, we had fake IDs to get into bars, not so much to get hammered, but to see bands that came through.
Yeah. And
you cram yourself in there with a bunch of your friends. You know, we didn't have cell phones at the time. You're drinking a little too young. The band's great. It's just an amazing feeling. And you can't see that on YouTube. And I don't know that a lot of these kids aren't even at least getting introduced to it. Like, you don't even know what you're missing, you know, just the early 20s going out to see bands. Ugh.
I don't know. I was scared of getting kidnapped when my early teens. I was scared of, even early teens. I was scared of getting raped and kidnapped. They really put that into my head in the 90s.
That's the age difference there.
Yeah,
for sure.
And the sex difference. I've never once ever in my life, once I became big enough to handle myself, have I ever worried about somebody kidnapping my ass? You know what I mean? It's never, I've never walked out of my house and thought, I hope I don't get kidnapped today. You know, that is something
they really
you do
scared
have to
us
worry
with
about.
that. They scared us with that, rapes and murders and kidnappings. And I was so scared. And okay, but here's what I wanted to say about podcasting. I think it's cool because as long as we don't lose them, it really is going to be better for posterity to know what happened during these times than we have for old times. Because as we know, what people print in print isn't actually real. You know, they just print what they want to print, and depending on what you're reading, it may not be true. So now it's kind of like new journalism.
Now you got the source material to go back to. If they just trim out a little bit from something, you go, no, here it is live on tape.
If they say Ryan Sickler said something, you could go back and listen to Ryan Sickler's hundreds of podcasts and hear who he is. You know what I mean? And what he meant when he said what he said, because you know him as a person, you know? So I think
certainly I make my mistakes. I'm thick-headed sometimes, but I told my daughter's mom and other people, if something ever happens to me, tell my daughter to go listen to my podcast. She'll know who her father was.
Yeah.
If she listens to my podcast. That is who I am. You know, it's interesting. You've got this diary, really, this journal of who you are as well over all these years.
Right.
And you can hear how, like, I have friends of mine now and fans that'll be like, man, I just found out about you. And I go back and listen to the Crab Feast. Man, you didn't even have a kid yet. So they're hearing like, oh, you're engaged. Oh, now you have a kid. Oh, that engagement didn't last. Oh, oops, now you're a single parent. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, there's a 7-year arc of life that's happening in those interviews too. And it's all there. So she can hear about it. She can listen to it. You know, I go ahead.
That'll be just normal for her. Like, can you think about it? We're about the same age. You think about if we were able to scroll through our phone to go back to junior high and actually see video of us or see some of the dumb fucking shit we were saying or doing. I'm thankful that my formative years are not chronicled.
Yeah, me too. I'd be mortified. By the way, none of us would work. No. None of us would have jobs today if we were all on camera for our whole fucking life, you know.
Sure.
None of us.
Y'all could tell anything and we'd believe you.
That's true. We can make up all kinds of stories about our past. You have no idea.
I mean, you brought up a great point about people writing things and omitting. Like, the people today, they're not new thoughts to change narrative or eliminate shit, which is why if you're a critical thinker, you go back to things like Bibles or any of this and you think, well, wait, if someone today would misprint some shit on the internet, why wouldn't they fucking throw it in a journal back then? Why wouldn't they throw it in a book back then, a chronicle back then? Like, it's not fucking changing information is not new. You know?
Assholes have always been in charge.
Yes, always.
We always talk about the Native Americans and things like that. I'm like, yeah, they live on the land and everything, but I'm sure the chiefs were dickheads just like everybody.
Everybody's got their dickheads.
In charge is a dickhead, you know, it just happens that way.
Power and money and greed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ryan, thank you so much for doing with us. We've gone an hour, a little over.
Have we?
Yes, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
For real. Thank you so much for having me. I sincerely appreciate you reaching out. I want to get you on too. So you got to come to LA and do this.
I'm there.
And
I want to meet Lana too when she's in town.
I was about to say
she's coming to NAMM. Yeah, she's coming. When is that? This month? Oh, wait.
I think it's July
June?
this year.
July
this
okay.
year. Yeah. But I think
I want to get down there and do some shows too. I want to meet you guys. I want to try to do some Nashville shows and hang out with you guys and Josh and see those guys when I get down there.
Please do. We'll show you around. We know where to go and where not to go. Those guys just we know what's going on.
And I'll make sure you have all the green you need while you're here in Nashville.
Thank you so much. Speaking of green, you should be getting your night pants any day now. They should be coming. Wait.
I'll do a photo.
Let me know.
Okay.
Please.
All right. Thanks.
You guys are the best. Thank you.
Right. Nice to meet you, man.
You too. Bye-bye.
Ryan Sickler is my favorite comedian. I love his laugh so much.
He's hilarious. It was a great time hanging out and getting to know him a little bit. Hopefully we'll see him if he makes it down to Nashville.
Yeah. And hey, Nashvillians, come out to his show at Zany's.
Yes. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Rate, subscribe, share, tell all your friends, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. Let us know who you want on and we'll reach out and see if we can get that comedian on.
Let's do it.
Don't be an asshole.
I know your mama's name.
Free Britney.
Enjoy your groceries.